All right, I just did a real brief video on Donald Trump on that CNN meeting last night. Um, Ted Cruz obviously was also at that town hall meeting last night, and Ted Cruz doesn't really have a legitimate way of getting the nomination before the convention is concerned. And he's currently relying on the current convention rules in order to keep Kasich out of it. But the current convention make their own rules. So that rule that you had to have won 8 states may not be in play, and probably will not be in play for this particular convention. In talking about patrolling Muslim neighborhoods, Bill Bratton kicked his ass on that, but he just doesn't get it. He claims that he's not targeting, but in the next breath he wants to target Islamists, and he calls Islam our enemy, just as Donald Trump did. Now, when Bratton, police chief in New York, basically nailed him, he turned around last night and wants to claim that Bratton is political. Well, he could be political, but his main job is that of protecting the city of New York, and I don't actually want to call that a political job. The identification unit that Cruz was talking about was already being shut down when Bill de Blasio came in, but Cruz wanted to lay the shutdown of that particular unit totally at the hands of de Blasio. Now, as far as Cruz crying about Donald Trump getting $1.8 billion of free media, whose fault was that? All of the morning shows and even the evening shows all had open invitations for both Cruz and Kasich and any political candidate for the presidency to come on to their shows, and not one of them, other than Trump, took advantage of it. So Trump got 1.8 billion. He could have got 1.8 billion as well. And Kasich crying all the time, but he had an opportunity to come on to the shows as well. So Cruz turned down the free media, and that's nobody's fault but his own. Now, Cruz is a sleaze because, well, really, I believe he's a sleaze because of what he did with Carson. And I honestly do believe that he somehow did coordinate with that anti-Trump super PAC on that ad showing Donald Trump's wife in quite revealing position. Even though it was legit, the ad was, the picture was from a GQ photo shot, and she wasn't actually totally naked, but was very revealing. Now, the thing that bothers me about Lyin Ted is he's always talking about religion, freedom of religion, and he's constantly using it to defend his position. But, I don't want anybody that is, falling back on religion. Yeah, being a moral person, yeah, that's okay. But using it in order to justify your position, for me, that's a no-no. Now, as far as ISIS is concerned, last night he never answered a specific question on exactly how he would go after ISIS. And to me, he's constantly trying to berate President Obama about that, but he never comes up with anything specific. Now, one of the people last night asked him a question, pretty much the same thing that they asked Donald Trump. Dairy farm labor is really dependent on immigrants, and Americans really don't want to do those particular jobs. So as far as him claiming that immigrants are driving down the wages, that's not true. Because if you can't get an American to do the job, and you don't hire immigrants, you're going to have to drive wages way up, above what they probably should be in order to get Americans to want to do those jobs. So if you can't get American laborers to do those jobs, then you're going to need to use immigrants in order to do those jobs. Now, again, he wants to target Muslims, okay, and that's a violation of the First Amendment. It's a violation of basic morality as far as targeting Muslims and basically trying to keep them under lock and key in their communities. Now, he also made a mistake. He called his home state Florida, and anybody that knows Ted Cruz knows that his home state is Texas. So I couldn't understand how he blew up on that one. He also claimed that his family member didn't know how to type, but she was a computer programmer. How can you program computers without being able to type? Doesn't make sense. And that family member was his mother. So he's claiming that he's pro-woman, but that's a bunch of bullshit. Most people know that Republicans definitely on pro-woman, i.e. wanting them to be paid the same amount as men, and they always fight against that, and obviously abortion rights. He was talking about reinstating the work for welfare that Bill Clinton signed into law when he was in office, and that Obama, when unemployment went up to 10%, he suspended the rules. But he's saying that because the employment rate is down at 5% or it's 5%, that the work for welfare and food stamps should be reinstated. Well, if you do that and people start working and they're making $7.25 an hour, they probably will turn around and not be eligible for for welfare or for food stamps. So that in itself wouldn't make sense. So I mean, there's so many open questions with Ted Cruz. It's like ridiculous.